everyone, it is E and welcome back to my channel. In this week's video we're going to be doing the next several movies in our decom review series. If you haven't guessed yet, yes, we will be covering zombies and Zombies 2 in this video. The theme of this week's video is Disney movies with sequels. And yes, I did do this whole face of makeup and green hair just to film this very brief intro. That's where I am right now. That's where I am. I said the last video was the one that made me insane. I didn't realize how much room I had left to go, how much further I could descend into Disney Channel original movie madness, and yet, here we are. Let's just jump into it, shall we?
Alright, so we'll just go ahead and start off with zombies. There's so much good to say. I love the set design and the costumes. I love how the humans in the movie all wear cutesy pastel colors. Now, this movie does have beginning, opening, exposition, narration, but it was done in a very interesting way. They did it like with this unique comic book style, so it was tolerable. I don't care for the way that they break the fourth wall in this movie. I don't understand why they do that. I don't know if it's like supposed to be like a Ferris Bueller's Day Off type of riff. I don't know. But it's okay. I mean, that's not really something that detracts from my enjoyment of the movie. I just don't understand why they chose to do that. The dancing in this movie is really good and cool and fun to watch and current. The whole concept for this movie is unique and original. So basically, it's about a school where zombies are going to be integrated into classes with humans, but it doesn't really start off that way. At first they're in the basement, and then slowly Zed, who's the male protagonist, convinces the principal to allow for more full integration if he is able to help the football team win more games, which he is able to because he's a zombie and he can tamper with his like zombie control device to make himself go more into like rage zombie mode, which, you know, helps him plow through people and score touchdowns. So, like, that whole concept is original, even down to, like, this is a school, a high school. You would think that football would be the cool thing, because that's always what it is, but in this high school, like, cheer is what everyone thinks is cool, and that would be totally unbelievable, except for they are so consistent in this movie, and nobody questions it. So that's a lot of what makes the world building in this movie so good, is that, like, they tell you something and they're consistent, they stick with it, and so it makes things believable that really shouldn't be believable. And there are also some like genuinely funny moments in this movie, like the football coach is hilarious. My impression watching it was like just, oh my gosh, this is so cute. The song Someday is amazing, one of the best love songs I think I've ever heard. The love story in this decom between the girl who wants to be a cheerleader and the boy who's a zombie, like, the love story is just so heartwarming and cute and sweet, and the two of them, like, do a good job of communicating with each other, so the conflict in the movie doesn't derive from them being unable to communicate or any misunderstandings or anything stupid like that. The conflict is just what you would think it would be. Zombies aren't really accepted at school. The ending of the movie, I don't want to spoil it too much because I actually want you to watch this movie. If you have not seen this movie yet, please do. But this is not really a spoiler. At the beginning of the movie, Addison, who's the female protagonist, she tells you that her hair is freakish white and she wears a wig to cover it. But the wig that they use to be her real white hair is very bad. It's a bad wig. That's not a spoiler, but it's true. And they fix it for the second movie, which I'm grateful for. And in fact, the ending of the movie is probably my least favorite aspect of the movie. So there's a big climactic scene at a football game. And I love that scene. And I won't go into all of the reasons why, but there's a really good song. And it's just a heartbreaking scene. It's very well done, I think. It's a little cheesy because there's like a montage. But the rest of the movie after that I don't 100% agree with. Because it seems like, okay, this movie is a poor analogy for racism. And the ending seems to imply that, like, riots and protests aren't really the good way or a good way to combat racism, but it should always just be like peaceful and like through attempting to assimilate, which I don't think was really the intention of the movie. I think that if you look at the movie as a analogy for racism, then there's so many things you can pick apart. The movie seems to imply that, like, you know, fitting in is the main priority, and that you can earn respect, which is not really a good message in the context of racism. But I think if you're not looking at it through like a microscopic lens and trying to pick apart this analogy, then still it's a really good message. And the ending worked out pretty well, and this is definitely one of my new favorite movies. Obviously, you could tell from the intro, I loved zombies. I've watched it twice in just like a week. I've been singing the songs, listening to the songs. I'm totally in love with this movie. So I give the story a 4 out of 5, and that's just, I only took a point off because the ending was a little weak. The acting is good. I give it a 5 out of 5. The lesson gets a 4 out of 5 only because, like I said, if you're looking at it through that hyper-focused lens of, like, you know, racism, it's not a very good metaphor. The enjoyability gets a 5 out of 5. I wish I could rate it higher. And the songs, I originally gave it a 4 out of 5, but since I've been listening to the soundtrack, they're really good. So I'm going to bump the song rating up to a 5 out of 5. And that was the sound of me tossing my pen down as I penciled in my correction there for the rating. So since we're talking about zombies, we'll go ahead and talk about Zombies 2, which I did still like, not quite as much as the first one. Bucky, who is kind of the villain from the first movie, Addison's cousin, is still hilarious in this movie. He makes a comment that he always looks like a snack. That's funny. The football coach is still hilarious. The movie starts off fast, which is nice. It's not typical for DCOMs. Usually DCOMs take forever to get going. There's a lot of really good songs in this. So Willa, who's a werewolf, she sings this song. And well, she sings it with Wyatt. I think it's called We Own the Night or something like that. It's really, really good. It's a really good song. However, I think that the storytelling in this movie is not quite as good as in the first one. So basically, Seabrook, the town, discovers that there are indeed werewolves in the Forbidden Forest nearby, and the werewolves are coming out of the woods because they think Addison is their leader because of her white hair. And they're looking for her leadership because she's supposed to lead them to a moonstone, which is the source of their power. If they don't find the moonstone, then they will all become weak and die. But it doesn't really make a ton of sense because they think Addison is a werewolf and they think she's the leader werewolf, but she's not getting sick without access to the moonstone. So I don't really understand that, and she obviously isn't a werewolf. Like, she doesn't have sharp teeth or claws or any of the distinguishing features of the other werewolf they seem to have. So that aspect of the story doesn't make a ton of sense, them thinking that Addison is the alpha. And also, when they reemerge, Seabrook reenacts anti-monster laws, which, you know, put the curfew back in place. But I can't really tell what else is really going into effect. They put in these anti-monster laws because they're afraid of the werewolves, but the werewolves they allow to integrate into the school, just like the zombies did. And the zombies are still going to school. The only impact that really seems to have practically to the plot is that now zombies are not allowed to go to the prom, which is what they call their prom. So aside from those plot points that really don't make a ton of sense, I really do like Zed's characterization in this movie. They definitely fleshed him out a little bit more. He kind of becomes progressively more and more of a rule follower, and he becomes that and embodies that to a fault, which is a really interesting take on his character. He is definitely like a good boy rule follower in the first movie, but he's willing to bend and break rules, you know, to have fun and to be himself. But it seems like over the course of the first movie, and definitely in this movie, he's really become self-conscious and embarrassed maybe even about his status as a quote-unquote monster or a zombie. it seems like he's really ashamed of that side of himself, which at the beginning of the first movie, I didn't get that impression. So it makes me wonder if some of the events in the first movie, like him basically being forced to prove his worth, and also him having a brief experience of what it would be like to be human, has kind of put that in his mind, has like put that insecurity in him. But that insecurity is like fully fleshed out in this movie, and that's something that he has to overcome. And also, even though he is a minority, being a zombie, he is not immune to prejudice himself, so he has this kind of prejudice against the werewolves, and I think that that's an important thing that's an important lesson or takeaway from this movie. Anywho, there was a great rap battle in this movie, so Zed's running for class president against Bucky, and they do a rap battle debate, which is a really cool and creative way to handle that scene. Flesh and Bone is an amazing anthem about activism. And obviously at the prawn, the formal dance at the end of the movie. Everyone's formal wear is incredible. I love the costumes again in this movie. The cheerleading costumes look a little bit cheaper in this movie for some reason, and I'm not as much of a fan of them, but the rest of the costumes are awesome. And then there was an amazing reprise of the song Someday from the first movie. One for All was a good song. And I think that Zed's journey of self-acceptance throughout this movie was really well done too. And so, Zombies 2, again, I didn't like it quite as much as the first one because I don't think the storytelling was as tight, but it was still a really good movie with really good songs. So, the story, I'm going to give a 3 out of 5, which pains me because I love these two movies so much. The acting gets a 5 out of 5, the songs get a 5 out of 5, the lesson I think was handled even better in this movie gets a 5 out of 5, and the enjoyability gets a 5 out of 5. So, Zombies 2... really well, highly ranked too. And I just want to make a quick note. A lot of people criticize and say that Zed had to learn the same lesson in both movies, but I don't think he did. I don't think he really had to learn a lesson of self-acceptance in the first movie. I think that was definitely something that was more of a problem for him in the second movie, and that's why he had to seemingly relearn the lesson. It's because he never really learned it in the first place. So that's all I'm going to say about Zombies 2. I could do a whole video about Zombies and Zombies 2. Obviously, I really enjoyed these movies. Okay, now we're going to talk about probably the most famous DCOM of all time, and that is High School Musical. Now, you may wonder, why is High School Musical in this video about sequels? The reason is that I'm not counting High School Musical 3. High School Musical 3 is not a DCOM, it had a theatrical release, and honestly, I'm not going to talk about it at length, but High School Musical 3 was not a good movie. It was bad. I don't think it really did justice to the High School Musical, franchise. It had no plot. It was just a bunch of songs that were strung together by, it was nothing. High School Musical 3 was not a great movie. However, High School Musical, it's classic for a reason. There's a lot of cheesiness in this movie, but it's like the correct amount for a DCOM. I love how they start off, like when they get off the buses after winter break and they're back at school, how they say, "Happy Wildcat New Year." That's just so silly. If this movie were not so iconic, that line would be too cheesy, but this movie's iconic. I love how the kids are so, amped up on school spirit. I think that Zac Efron actually gives an excellent performance. Gabriella, aka Vanessa Ann Hudgens, she's not as good. She kind of talks with a baby voice, but she plays like a spacey girl pretty well. Like, she seems like she's kind of not ditzy. She's obviously a super genius. Like, that's part of her character. She's really smart, but she seems like she's always focused on something else, and I think that she plays that pretty well. However, Troy and Gabriella are both really boring people. There's not a lot of dimension to their characters in this movie. And it's also very obvious that Zac Efron is not singing in this movie. And sometimes the break between his speaking voice and the singing voice is too obvious because the voice of Troy's singing voice is actually a different actor. And Zac Efron is just lip syncing in this movie, and it's pretty obvious sometimes. But the songs are very sing-alongable. They're really, really good. They are truly unmatched, the songs that are in this series of films. Chad has really great t-shirts. His one that says "I come with my own background music" is so distinct in my mind. I remember that shirt from when I was a kid. Darbus, who is the theater teacher, is so over the top, but she's consistent throughout the movie, so that's actually, I love her character as well. There's an audition scene in the movie where it's like the auditions for the spring musical or whatever, or is it the winter musical? I think it's the winter musical. And the audition scene is genuinely funny. And when you're watching this movie back, you realize if Kelsey had not dropped her sheet music at the end of the audition, the movie would have been over. Because it's because she dropped her sheet music that Troy came to help her with it, and that he and Gabriella stood there with her and sang, and Darbus overheard it and allowed them the callback. Like, if Kelsey had not tripped, the movie would have been over. And it's just so funny. Stick to the Status Quo, though, that song doesn't really make much sense, because they all act like they're wanting to listen to each other, and they keep encouraging each other to, like, come out with their strange hobbies, but as soon as they do come out, they're like, ew, no. So it's like, what's the point? Wouldn't you just say, stay quiet, not, come on, speak your mind, and you'll be heard? And then they do speak their mind, and then they are immediately rejected. And you know what's weird is that in this movie and in High School Musical 2, which we'll get into in a second, it's incredible to me how much Troy and Gabriella's friends are total jerks. Like, they are not supportive of their friends at all. And basically, it's one of those things where it's like, Sharpay is supposed to be the villain of this movie. We're supposed to, and she kind of is, because she changes the date of the callback. But Gabriella and Troy's friends are just as much villains in this movie. They are trying to orchestrate and mastermind just as much as Sharpay is. But we're allowed and supposed to forgive Chad and all of them for, like, all of the scheming that they do, but we don't forgive Sharpay for it. So that's a little bit unfair. Anyway, the story I give a 3 out of 5. Honestly, there's not much plot to this movie. The acting I give a 4 out of 5. The lesson I give a 5 out of 5. We're all in this together. The songs get a 5 out of 5, and enjoyability get a 5 out of 5. Okay, let's talk about High School Musical 2 then. So, my biggest critique of this movie is that Sharpay is not treated fairly at all in this movie. So basically, she gets Troy a job, chances for a scholarship, promotions, etc. And all she wants in return for this is for him to sing with her in the talent show. And he spends the whole movie acting like she's the most revolting person on the planet, even though she's the one who's done all this stuff for him. And she also got all of his friends' jobs at the country club too. So basically, Sharpay set him and all of his friends up for summer jobs to make money. And on top of that, she's getting Troy opportunity after opportunity. And all she wants is for him to sing with her. And like I said, he treats her like she's garbage. And I don't really think that's fair to Sharpay. Now, a lot of people say that, like, this movie, it's like she's manipulating this situation, she's using her privilege, and Troy is experiencing white privilege because of blah, blah, blah. To me, I think you're looking too far into it. I think that the reason that Sharpay is doing these things for Troy, it's not a racially motivated type of favor. She's doing these things for Troy because, A, she has a small crush on him, and B, like I said, she wants to sing with him in a talent show. And for Sharpay's character, that makes total sense. Now, Troy's friends also treat him like crap for this. They're like, well, he's abandoned us. But to me, it's like, if I were Troy, I'd be like, can't you be supportive of me? Like, I'm getting incredibly lucky, okay, that all of these opportunities are being given to me and that Sharpay is working this stuff out for me. Like, I understand it's not fair, but do you expect me to throw away these opportunities just because it's unfair? Like, sometimes you get advantages in life that are unfair, but do you throw them away? And besides, it's not like if Troy weren't doing all these things with Sharpay, it's not like if Troy hadn't gotten a promotion, it's not like if Troy hadn't had the opportunity to meet with scouts from the college he was considering, that his friends would have gotten those opportunities. It's not like he's taking opportunities away from other people, per se, because Sharpay was creating these opportunities for Troy. It wasn't like these opportunities existed and she made sure that Troy got them. She created these opportunities for Troy. So, and his friends just cannot, for a second, think about what this could do for Troy's future. I think that it's really unfair. Really, the only sketchy thing that Sharpay does in the whole movie is prohibit Troy's friends from participating in the talent show, which she relents on just for her brother to betray her in the end and steal her performance. So she changes her mind and lets them perform, but even after she does the right thing, Ryan still basically prevents her from performing herself. And it's just like, why? Why do this to her? Gabriella also talks like a baby in this movie, and that's kind of annoying. And she laughs all the time for no reason. So I know it sounds like I've been critical of High School Musical 2. In fact, I like High School Musical 2, I think, better than the original High School Musical. I like the songs a little bit better, I think. But in terms of, like, Troy's friends and Sharpay's treatment in the movie, like, it does irritate me. But anyway, I give the story a 2 out of 5. The lesson gets a 1 out of 5. But the songs get a 5 out of 5. The acting, like I said, Gabriella kind of didn't seem like she was putting in the work in this movie, so I'd give it a 3 out of 5. The enjoyability, I give a 5 out of 5. And I would rank the enjoyability higher just so it could be High School Musical 1 in that regard. But it gets a 5 out of 5. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about Teen Beach Movie. This movie is incredibly fun and silly, and the songs are great. Ross Lynch, who plays Brady, has a really lovely singing voice, and so does the girl who plays Mac. The plot of Wet Side Story, which is the movie within the movie, doesn't make a ton of sense. So in the movie that they're transported into, okay, so that's what this movie's about. These kids who live on the beach, they get transported into a movie about the beach. From the 1960s. The villain of that movie wants to mess with the weather in order to drive off the surfers and the bikers so that he can create a resort on that land. But would the weather not also drive off resort guests? His whole plan doesn't make sense. You can't make a resort location on the beach with terrible weather all of the time. Nobody would want to come. So yes, you would get rid of your surfer and biker problem, but you would then have no guests to stay at your resort. So then that really doesn't make a ton of sense. But it's okay because the movie doesn't take itself very seriously, so it's like it doesn't matter, honestly. It leans into and embraces the cheesiness so much that it's like you can't criticize it for the cheesiness because it's like a parody of itself. It knows it's cheesy. And it's okay. One issue I have with this movie is Mac's feminism is an annoying waste of time. Now, I'm not anti-feminist, I'm a feminist, but in the context of this story, it makes no sense. She goes into this movie from the 1960s and she's trying to convince fictional characters in a movie that they're girls who can do anything. And it's like, you're not going to change fictional people, and even if you could, what would the difference be? Like, what? It's not going to make any impact on the real world. And she's so preachy. It's like you are so up on your high horse that you feel that you must impact people who don't exist. It was so strange. The other thing that doesn't really add up in this movie is that, like, Mac's whole journey in this movie is that she wants to change her destiny, but she spends the whole movie trying to get Layla and Tanner to stick to their script. So she's kind of like, I don't know, the lesson is kind of all over the place with her being like trying to preach feminism to these fictional characters, herself wanting to change her destiny, but then at the same time forcing the fictional characters to play out the movie exactly the way it's supposed to because that's the only way she can get back home. The plot doesn't make a ton of sense. But like I said, that's okay because this movie doesn't have to make sense. It's just supposed to be enjoyable and silly, and that's exactly what it is. So the story gets a 2 out of 5. The acting gets a 2 out of 5 because the guy who plays Tanner is just like really quite bad. The lesson gets a 0 out of 5. There's no lesson to this. The songs get a 4 out of 5, and enjoyability, like I said, I enjoyed the heck out of this movie. This movie was so much fun to watch. So when I was watching this originally, I wrote down the enjoyability gets a 10 out of 5, but I don't think that's really fair, so the enjoyability gets a 5 out of 5. Now, let's talk about Teen Beach 2, because that's a totally different story. So, when Brady and Mac went to the world of Wet Side Story, they were beholden to the laws of a movie musical. So, like, they sung involuntarily, their clothes changed, all that kind of stuff. Well, in Teen Beach 2, the characters from West Side Story get transported into the real world. But they are not beholden to the laws of the real world. They still have like movie magic. It starts to slowly fade through the movie, but it didn't work that way in the first movie. So it's like it's a world where the plot and the story doesn't make sense, but I still would like them to be consistent within that world. So even if the rules don't make sense, I don't want the rules to change. And they kind of do in this movie. As far as the ships go, so Brady and Mac are a couple, right? And they're irritating. Like, I cannot stand them together in this movie. And so it's like, I don't really root for them. I prefer Layla with Brady personally. And again, Layla's a fictional character, so it wouldn't really work out, but they have much better chemistry. And Tanner is still a goofy, annoying character in this movie with his constant inappropriate laughing. He's like an insane person. But there's like this part where he like dances with an inflatable tube man on the beach, and it's really funny. Another thing that's stupid about this movie, again, it's like the rules of the first movie didn't make any sense, but at least they were consistent within that movie. But it's like those rules no longer apply in this movie for anything. So in the first movie, it was very difficult for Brady and Mac to get back into the real world. Like they had to go through all of these steps. It was such a particular process for them to get transported back to the real world. But in this movie, Layla has like this necklace, and it seems like with that necklace they can travel between the worlds at will, apparently. So I don't know. Also, this movie has no plot, even less than the first movie. There are a few good points in this movie. For example, there's a reprise of the song Meant to Be from the first one, which was really nice. But the ending of this movie basically means that the whole first movie wasn't canon. And in fact, this whole movie wasn't canon. So it's really irritating to basically feel like you've watched two movies that aren't canon. You've watched two movies that never happened. And I really hate that. And I hate that Layla gets her happy ending because she's fictional. So like they change the movie. Somehow the fictional characters are able to, when they go back to the movie world, change the movie, and that changes what the movie is like in the real world. And so because the movie in the real world is different, like the whole world is different. And it's stupid, because I would rather that Brady and Mac have a happy ending because they're real people, and Layla isn't. So Teen Beach Movie 2 sucked. I hated Teen Beach 2. It was pointless. The story I give a 1 out of 5. The acting is a 4 out of 5. They were alright. The lesson I give a 2 out of 5 because this is another stupid live your dream story. The songs get a 3 out of 5 and the enjoyability gets a 2 out of 5. So I would say don't waste your time with Teen Beach 2. Alright, now it's Camp Rock time. The clothes in Camp Rock are insane. A lot of the songs and scenes are cringy. There are continuity errors. So like Mitchie sets tables, which a few scenes later kids are dancing on top of. They say things like blingalicious. Mitchie never eats anything, nor does anybody else in this movie. Mitchie, when she first meets Shane, way overreacts. So she gets to go to camp under the condition that her mom is like the caterer for the camp, and she has to help her mom in the kitchen. And Shane is this spoiled pop star who basically changes instantly in the movie. Like he's there for like a day and his attitude is pretty much improved. But anyway, when he first meets Mitchie, she's in the kitchen. She throws flour on her face so he won't recognize her and tell other people at camp that she's, working in the kitchen, because she's lying to everybody and saying her mom is like an important executive when she's really the cook. But Shane comes in there and then complains that he had given his dietary restrictions to the chef and he didn't have anything to eat for breakfast because everything on his plate was something he was allergic to. And Mitchie like flips out at him and says he's rude, but it's like, if he can't eat, he can't eat. Why are you chewing him out? That's discrimination against people with allergies. And I'm not here for that. Also, there's a scene where Joe Jonas, who's playing Shane, has to lead a hip-hop dance class, and that scene is totally laughable. I'm sorry, I love Joe Jonas, but he's not a hip-hop dancer. And there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's laughable, like Tess, when she sings her little song, I'm too cool for you. Somehow she has real-time auto-tuning for her voice, and she's not even singing into a microphone, so I don't know how in the world that's happening. Also, like, at one scene there's like a food fight, and like on the kid's plate is just plain spaghetti noodles. And her mom is supposed to be a good cook, right? And she's catering this camp, and she's serving kids plain spaghetti noodles. No sauce. No sauce. It doesn't even look like they're buttered. Just plain spaghetti noodles. I also love how in this movie, like, okay, so Shane Gray, who's this pop star or whatever, he's like, oh, I want to play real music. And when he goes to Camp Rock, he's like out playing by the lake and singing. And Mitchie comes in like, wow, it's really good. And it's like, he's like, oh, it's totally different from my cookie cutter pop star stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, this song is really not that deep and insightful. It's still pretty much a cookie cutter pop star song. It's not like something that's so deep and impactful. Some good points of this movie: Mitchie's mom is a really capable actor. She plays Alex's mom on Wizards of Waverly Place, and she's really good. Margaret's song at the end of the movie is really good. The final song, This Is Me, with Joe Jonas singing the I Gotta Find You part is incredible, like makes the whole movie worth it. The whole ending of the movie though is kind of dumb, because it's like Tess prevents Mitchie and Allison Stoner's character, Caitlin, prevents them from participating in the final jam by framing them for stealing a charm bracelet. And it's like, how did she know that would be their punishment for stealing a charm bracelet? Like, to me, if I was the camp leader, I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, now you're banned from final jam. I would say some other type of punishment. Not that. It was stupid. I don't know. And it was dumb anyway because there was no real way to prove that they stole it. I mean, I guess, like, the evidence is that they had it in their possession, but I don't know. It was kind of contrived. It was a stupid ending, especially considering, like, it didn't really mean anything. The story gets a 3 out of 5 because not that much makes sense. The acting gets a 3 out of 5 because there's so much cringe. The songs get a 4 out of 5, and I give them a point off because Tessa's songs are just okay. The lesson gets a 5 out of 5, be yourself, and enjoyability gets a 4 out of 5. Let's talk about Camp Rock 2. So this is a bit more musically than Camp Rock. So Camp Rock in the original, all of the songs that are sung in the movie are actually like performances, whereas in Camp Rock 2, people burst into song, which is at times kind of awkward, like when Mitchie starts singing the we can't back down. It's kind of like, it's really awkward leading into that song. However, I really don't mind the musicaliness of this movie because the songs are really good. I like the story of this movie. It's got a much better plot in my opinion, but Mitchie gets on my nerves because basically there's a rival camp that's open across the lake, and so Camp Rock is struggling, and so Mitchie is spending this movie really devoted to like helping Camp Rock survive. And Shane came to Camp Rock just to spend time with Mitchie, and she basically blows him off the whole time, and she makes the camp miserable for everybody else. So, like, she basically makes her whole camp about the camp war. But Camp Rock was supposed to be fun, and Shane understands that. And in the movie acts like Shane is the bad guy for trying to get Mitchie to lighten up and have fun. In my opinion, Shane was right the whole time. If it weren't for the perfect duet, which is called I Wouldn't Change a Thing, I would not ship Mitchie and Shane after this movie, but that song is so good that it's like, okay, yeah, I ship them. I love Nate and Jason's little subplot, so that's Nick Jonas and Kevin Jonas. So Nick has a little love story going on, and Kevin Jonas has like this thing with the junior campers going on, and they're both really cute subplots. But even though they were really, I think those subplots were really only there to pad out the runtime. But anyway, I do like Camp Rock 2. I give the story a 5 out of 5 because it actually has a decent plot. The acting gets a 4 out of 5. The songs get a 5 out of 5. The lesson gets a 3 out of 5, and the enjoyability gets a 4 out of 5. Alright, so that's going to do it for this week's video. Sorry if it's a bit of a long one, because these movies are iconic. That's why they got sequels, and that's why I talked about them at such length. I hope you all liked the art this week. Obviously, I did Zed and Addison from Zombies, and I drew Addison wearing Zed's football jersey because I thought that would be really cute. They're just precious. I hope you all have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye-bye.